The air in the grand dining room of the Palmetto Rose, Charleston's most elegant restaurant, shimmered with celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over linen-draped tables, where the scent of magnolia blossoms from centerpieces mingled with the aroma of low-country shrimp and grits. It was May, and the South Carolina sunset painted the sky outside in hues of peach and gold, a perfect backdrop for my daughter Sophie's college graduation party. At 55, I, Eleanor Hayes, stood at the heart of this moment, my heart swelling with pride for Sophie, who had just earned her degree from Duke University with honors. She sat beside me, her graduation cap tilted playfully on her head, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with friends. My husband of 30 years, Robert, stood at the head of the table, his champagne glass raised, ready to deliver a toast to our daughter's achievement. 50 guests, friends, family, colleagues watched expectantly, their smiles mirroring my own. This was supposed to be a night of joy, a milestone etched in memory. But in a single breath, Robert shattered that illusion, and my world tilted on its axis. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, his voice smooth, commanding attention as it always did. He was 57, still handsome in his tailored suit, with the charisma that had drawn me to him 3 decades ago. "We're here to celebrate Sophie, our brilliant daughter who's made us so proud." His eyes met mine briefly, and I smiled, expecting the familiar warmth of our shared pride. But then his expression shifted, something hard, almost triumphant, flickered in his gaze. "But I have another announcement," he continued, his tone steady, deliberate. "After 30 years, I've decided to start a new chapter in my life. A life without Eleanor." The words landed like a thunderclap. The room fell silent, the clink of silverware and murmur of conversations snuffed out. 50 pairs of eyes darted between Robert and me, waiting for the explosion of tears, the shouting, the chaos they assumed would follow. Sophie's hand froze on her glass, her face draining of color. From the corner of my eye, I saw Lauren Brooks, Robert's 38-year-old colleague, shift uncomfortably at a back table, her blonde hair catching the light. She was surrounded by people I'd called friends for years, people who now avoided my gaze. The weight of betrayal pressed against my chest, but I refused to let it crush me. Instead, I did what I'd always done in moments of crisis. I took control. My heart pounded, but my face remained serene. I rose from my chair, smoothing the folds of my navy dress, and met Robert's eyes. His triumphant smirk faltered just for a moment as I raised my own glass. "To honesty," I said, my voice clear, cutting through the stunned silence. "Congratulations, Robert, on finally speaking your truth." A ripple of whispers spread through the room, but I held his gaze, unyielding. Sophie's eyes widened, her confusion palpable. But I gave her a reassuring nod. This was her day, and I would not let Robert's cruelty steal it from her. With practiced calm, I reached into my handbag and withdrew a cream-colored envelope, sealed with a single wax stamp. I placed it gently beside Robert's plate, my movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. "What's this?" he asked, his voice sharp, the confidence draining from his face. "Something for you to read later," I replied, my tone steady, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. I turned to Sophie, whose expression was a mix of shock and fear, and leaned down to kiss her cheek. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," I whispered. "This day is still yours." Then, I addressed the room, my voice warm but firm. "Please, everyone, enjoy your meal. I wish you all a wonderful evening." With that, I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against the polished oak floor, feeling the weight of 50 stairs on my back. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind me, muffling the rising tide of anxious murmurs. Outside, the Charleston air was thick with summer heat, the scent of salt water drifting from the nearby harbor. I welcomed the intensity, letting it ground me. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, unburdened by the role I'd played for so long. The devoted wife, the silent supporter, the woman who held everything together while Robert chased his fleeting dreams. Behind me, the restaurant doors burst open, and Robert's voice, no longer smooth but high-pitched and frantic, pierced the evening air. "Eleanor, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I didn't turn back. Instead, I allowed myself a small, private smile. The envelope I'd given him held the opening move of a plan I'd been crafting. For months, a plan born not of spite, but of survival. Inside were the divorce papers I'd filed that morning, along with a summary of evidence that would unravel his carefully constructed lies. Robert had underestimated me, as he always had. But I was no longer the woman who stood in his shadow. This moment wasn't just about Robert's betrayal. It was about reclaiming my voice. For 30 years, I'd poured my energy into our family, supporting Robert through failed Venturisa, a restaurant that collapsed in a year, a tech startup that never launched, while raising Sophie into the brilliant, compassionate woman she'd become. I'd put my own dreams on hold, dreams of opening a financial consultancy to empower women, always telling myself, after Sophie graduates, after Robert finds his footing. But tonight, I realized those excuses were chains, and I was ready to break free. As I walked toward my car, parked beneath a canopy of live oaks draped in Spanish moss, I thought of Sophie. Her graduation was a triumph, not just for her, but for me. I'd worked extra hours as a financial analyst at Coastal Trust Bank to fund her education when Robert's investments went south. I'd stayed up late helping her with college applications, celebrating every acceptance letter. This day belonged to her, and I'd fought to keep it that way, even as Robert tried to make it about his escape. But there was another layer to this evening, one I'd woven into the fabric of the celebration. Earlier, I'd announced a small fundraiser during the party, collecting donations for a scholarship fund for young women at the College of Charleston. It was my way of giving back, of planting seeds for the next generation, even as my own world shifted. The guests had responded generously, unaware of the storm brewing. That act of generosity grounded me now, reminding me of who I was beyond Robert's wife, a woman with purpose, with vision, with a heart that refused to be dimmed. Robert's announcement wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a public humiliation designed to catch me off guard, to make me crumble in front of everyone we knew. But he'd forgotten her, perhaps never truly understood that I was a financial expert with 30 years of experience, a woman who thrived on strategy and precision. Months ago, I'd noticed irregularities in our joint accounts, small transfers to an unfamiliar account. My intuition, honed by years of managing our family's finances, had sparked an investigation that uncovered his affair with Lauren, his plans to leave me, and his reckless spending on a future he thought he could buy. I could have confronted him then, but I chose patience. I chose power. The envelope was my first step toward justice, but it was also a symbol of something greater, my refusal to be defined by someone else's choices. As I slid into my car, the leather cool against my skin, I glanced back at the Palmetto Rose, its windows glowing with the life I was leaving behind. Robert was still outside, pacing, the envelope clutched in his hand. He thought he'd written the end of our story, but he was wrong. This was my beginning. The morning after Robert's devastating announcement at the Palmetto Rose, I woke to the soft light filtering through the shutters of our Charleston home, a historic townhouse on King Street where live oaks whispered stories of resilience. The house smelled of jasmine from the garden and the faint cedar of the antique furniture I'd lovingly restored over the years. At 55, I, Eleanor Hayes, stood in the quiet of my kitchen, brewing coffee as I had every morning for 3 decades. But today was different. The weight of Robert's wordless public declaration to leave me for a new life lingered like a bruise on my heart. Yet, as I sipped my coffee, gazing out at the cobblestone street where tourists already strolled, I felt a spark of something new. Not just pain, but purpose. To understand who I was now, I had to look back at the woman I'd been, the woman who'd built this family, brick by brick, only to watch Robert try to tear it down. For 30 years, I'd been the backbone of our marriage, the steady hand guiding us through storms while Robert chased fleeting dreams. When we met in our 20s, his ambition had captivated me. He was a risk-taker, a man who saw possibilities where others saw obstacles. I was a young financial analyst at Coastal Trust Bank, grounded in numbers and strategy, and I believed we balanced each other. But love, I learned, often demands sacrifice, and I gave more than I realized. When Robert launched his first Venturisa seafood restaurant in Myrtle Beach that promised to be the next big thing, I put my own dreams on hold. I'd wanted to start a financial consultancy for women, helping them navigate life's uncertainties with confidence. But Robert needed my support, so I stayed at the bank, working long hours to keep us afloat when the restaurant folded after 18 months. That was just the beginning. Over the years, Robert poured our savings into one failed idea after another, a tech startup that never got off the ground, a boutique winery that lasted 6 months. Each time, I was there, picking up the pieces. I took on extra projects at work to fund Sophie's private school, her piano lessons, her college applications. Sophie, our brilliant daughter, was my North Star. At 22, she just graduated from Duke University with honors. Her laughter and determination, a testament to the love I'd poured into her. But raising her meant late nights helping with homework, early mornings driving to soccer practice, and endless conversations about her dreams. I was her cheerleader, her confidant, and, when Robert was too busy chasing his next big idea, her anchor. Our Charleston community was my refuge during those years. I joined a local book club, where we debated novels over glasses of sweet tea, and volunteered with the Women's Scholarship Fund at the College of Charleston, raising money for young women like Sophie. These connections grounded me, reminding me of my own strength even when I felt invisible in my marriage. But there was another, more private ritual that kept me whole. My journal. Tucked in a locked drawer in my study, it held my deepest thoughts, my buried dreams. One day, I'll build my consultancy. I wrote 5 years ago. The ink smudged by tears. After Sophie graduates, after Robert finds his footing. Those words were promises to myself, a lifeline I clung to when doubt crept in. Robert's betrayal at Sophie's graduation wasn't just a personal wound. It was a mirror reflecting the imbalance of our life together. While I managed our finances with precision, ensuring we never missed a mortgage payment, Robert spent recklessly, his midlife crisis manifesting in expensive hobbies and, as I'd later discover, gifts for Lauren Brooks. Lauren, 38, was a marketing consultant who'd attended our Christmas parties, her charm disarming me until I saw her for what she was, the woman Robert chose over our family. The friends who knew about their affair but never told me people I'd hosted in this very home cut just as deeply. Yet, as I stood in my kitchen, the morning light warming my face, I realized their silence had only strengthened my resolve. Sophie's graduation had been a milestone I'd worked toward for years. I'd saved diligently for her tuition, even when Robert insisted on investing in a friend's failing vineyard. I'd stayed up late editing her college essays, celebrating when Duke offered her a scholarship. Her success was my victory too, a reminder that my sacrifices had meaning. But Robert's announcement had threatened to overshadow that joy, to rewrite our family's story as one of failure. I wouldn't let it. The envelope I'd given him at the restaurant containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit was my first step toward reclaiming our narrative. It was a declaration that I was more than the woman who'd held our family together. I was a force, ready to rebuild. My journal, which I pulled from its drawer that morning, became a map of my heart. Flipping through its pages, I saw the woman I'd been, patient, practical, but also fiercely hopeful. I want to help women like me, I'd written after a long day at the bank. Women who feel trapped by circumstance, who need someone to show them they're enough. That dream had never died, only waited. As I traced the words with my finger, I felt a surge of clarity. Robert's betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the catalyst for a new chapter, one where I'd finally step into the life I'd postponed for too long. Charleston, with its historic charm and resilient spirit, mirrored my own journey. The city had weathered hurricanes and wars, yet its cobblestone streets and pastel homes stood proud. I'd always loved walking along the Battery, the salty breeze from the harbor clearing my mind. Those walks had been my sanctuary during Robert's failures, when I'd whisper to myself, "You are enough." Now, as I prepared to face the fallout of his announcement, that mantra felt truer than ever. I wasn't just Eleanor, Robert's wife, or Sophie's mother. I was a woman with expertise, with passion, with a vision to empower others. Sophie's face from the night before haunted me, her shock, her pain as Robert's words sank in. I'd protected her from my suspicions about her father, wanting her final semester at Duke to be untainted by our troubles. But now, she'd need me more than ever. I texted her, "I'm okay, sweetheart. We'll talk soon. I love you." Her reply came quickly. "Love you too, Mom. I'm so sorry. Her words broke my heart, but they also steeled my resolve. This wasn't just about me. It was about showing Sophie that betrayal didn't define us. We could rise. Together. As I set my journal aside, I thought of the Women's Scholarship Fund event I'd organized at the graduation party. Raising money for young women had felt like a quiet act of defiance, a way to honor Sophie's achievement and my own values, even as Robert planned his exit. The guest generosity had reminded me of the community I'd built, a network of support that would carry me through the days ahead. Charleston wasn't just a backdrop. It was a partner in my reinvention, its history of survival echoing my own. Robert's voice echoed in my mind, his smug announcement replaying like a bad song. But I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the envelope, the first move in a strategy I'd crafted with the precision of the financial analyst I was. I'd spent 30 years building a life for us, sacrificing my dreams to keep our family whole. Now, I'd use that same strength to build a life for myself, one where I was the architect, not the caretaker. The woman behind the family was stepping forward, and she was ready to fight. The marsh breeze carried the tang of salt and possibility as I sat on my porch in Charleston, South Carolina, the historic townhouse on King Street humming with the quiet of early spring. It was 3 months before Sophie's graduation from Duke University, and at 55, I, Eleanor Hayes, was a woman accustomed to order. My life as a financial analyst at Coastal Trust Bank had taught me to spot patterns, to sense when numbers didn't add up. But it wasn't just numbers that raised alarms that February morning. It was a feeling, a whisper of unease that had grown louder over the past year as my husband of 30 years, Robert, drifted further from me. His late nights, his guarded phone, the way his laughter no longer reached his eyes when we shared coffee, these were red flags, subtle but undeniable. When I opened our joint bank account statement and saw a series of small, unfamiliar transfers, that whisper became a roar. I didn't confront Robert. Not yet. Instead, I began a quiet investigation, one that would uncover a betrayal deeper than I'd imagined and set me on a path to reclaim my life. The first clue was a $500 transfer to an account I didn't recognize, labeled simply consulting. Robert had always been impulsive with money, but I managed our finances with precision, ensuring our mortgage was paid, Sophie's tuition was covered, and our retirement was secure. This transfer, followed by others $200 here, $700 there, stood out like cracks in a foundation. My training kicked in. I logged into our accounts, cross-referencing dates and amounts, my fingers steady on the keyboard despite the tremor in my chest. The transactions led to a separate account in Robert's name, one he'd never mentioned. My heart sank, but I pushed forward, driven by a need to understand, to protect the life I'd built for Sophie and myself. Charleston's charm, with its pastel homes and cobblestone streets, had always been my refuge. That afternoon I walked along the Battery, the harbor glittering under a Carolina sun, and let the rhythm of the waves steady my thoughts. I'd recently joined a support group for women at the local community center, a space where we shared stories of loss, ambition, and resilience over cups of sweet tea. The group, led by a therapist named Clara, had taught me to trust my intuition, to name the unease I'd buried for years. "Your gut knows before your heart does," Clara had said, her words echoing as I watched a pelican dive into the water. My gut was screaming now, and I listened. Back home, I enrolled in an online course on advanced financial forensics, a decision born of both curiosity and necessity. The course, offered through a university in Raleigh, sharpened my ability to trace money trails, to uncover hidden accounts. Late at night, while Robert slept or claimed to be at meetings, I studied, my laptop glowing in the study where my journal of dreams lay hidden. The course wasn't just about skills, it was a lifeline, a reminder that I was more than Robert's wife or Sophie's mother. I was a woman with expertise, with power, and I would use it to uncover the truth. The truth revealed itself in fragments, each one a shard in my heart. Using the forensic techniques I'd learned, I traced Robert's secret account to a series of extravagant purchases. Dinners at Miami's top restaurants, a diamond bracelet from a jeweler in Atlanta, a deposit on a beachfront condo in South Beach. The amounts were staggering, especially when Robert had claimed we needed to tighten our belts for retirement. Then came the moment that broke me. One evening, while Robert showered, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Left unlocked. Rare mistake. I hesitated, my hand trembling, but I opened it. The messages between Robert and Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, were a gut punch. After Sophie's graduation, I'll tell her, Robert had written. A public setting's best, she won't make a scene. Lauren's reply. And the condo? You promised. My knees buckled, but I read on, screenshotting every word, my tears blurring the screen. Lauren, with her polished smile and easy charm, had been a guest in our home, sipping wine at our Christmas parties, asking my advice on her career. I'd trusted her, just as I'd trusted the friends who, I later learned, knew about the affair but said nothing. The betrayal wasn't just Robert's. It was a web of silence that had ensnared our social circle. Yet, as I sat in the dark, the screenshots saved to a secure folder, I felt a shift. The pain was real, but so was my resolve. I wouldn't let this define me. I would turn their deceit into my strength. My support group became my anchor. At the next meeting, I shared my discovery. My voice shaking, but steady. The women listened, their eyes full of empathy and fire. You're not alone, said Maria, a divorcee who'd rebuilt her life after a similar betrayal. Use what you know, Eleanor. You're smarter than he thinks. Their encouragement fueled me, reminding me of the community I'd built in Charleston, a city that had survived storms and risen stronger. I began to see my investigation not as a reaction to Robert's betrayal, but as an act of reclaiming my agency, my future. I recorded snippets of Robert's calls when he spoke carelessly in our home, his voice smug as he discussed his new life with Lauren. Georgia law, I'd learned, allowed recordings with one party's consent, and our home was my domain. Eleanor trusts me completely, he said once, laughing. That's her weakness. His words stung, but they also clarified my purpose. He thought trust was weakness. I'd show him it was my strength. I documented every transaction, every message, building a case as meticulously as I'd built our family's financial security. Sophie, blissfully unaware at Duke, deserved a mother who fought for her, who showed her what resilience looked like. Charleston's history of survival inspired me. Walking through the French Quarter, past galleries and gaslit lanterns, I thought of the women who'd rebuilt this city after fires and wars. I was part of that legacy now, forging my own path. My online course had introduced me to a network of women in finance, and I joined their virtual forums, sharing tips and gaining confidence. One night, a forum member from Seattle sent me a message. You're uncovering a money trail, but you're also uncovering yourself. Her words stayed with me, a reminder that this journey was about more than exposing Robert. It was about rediscovering Eleanor. As Sophie's graduation approached, I knew Robert planned to use it as his stage, to humiliate me publicly before starting over with Lauren. But I was ready. The evidence I'd gathered, bank records, screenshots, recordings, was a shield, a sword, a map to justice. I hadn't confronted Robert because I wanted him to believe he'd won, to walk into the trap he'd set for himself. The envelope I'd prepare for him, containing divorce papers and a summary of his deceit, would be my first strike. But it was more than that. It was a declaration. I was no longer the woman who'd waited for someday. Someday was now. Standing on my porch that spring morning, the marsh stretching toward the horizon, I felt the weight of my discoveries, but also the lightness of possibility. Charleston's beauty, its resilience, mirrored my own. I wasn't just investigating Robert's betrayal. I was investigating who I could become. The red flags had led me here, to a moment of truth, not just about my marriage, but about my strength, my worth, my future. I was Eleanor Hayes, and I was ready to fight not with anger, but with the quiet power of a woman who'd finally seen the light. The Charleston dawn broke over King Street, painting the historic townhouse in hues of coral and gold, as if the city itself were whispering courage. It was late April, weeks before Sophie's graduation from Duke University, and I, Eleanor Hayes, sat in my study at 55, surrounded by the scent of old books and the faint hum of a city waking up. My laptop glowed with the evidence I'd meticulously gathered. Bank records, screenshots of Robert's messages with Lauren Brooks, recordings of his careless boasts about leaving me. For months, I'd unraveled the truth of my husband's betrayal, his secret account funding a new life with his 38-year-old colleague, But knowledge alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan, a way to protect Sophie and myself, to turn Robert's deceit into a reckoning. That plan took shape in a cream-colored envelope, sealed with a wax stamp, a symbol of justice I'd crafted with the precision of the financial analyst I'd been for 30 years. This envelope wasn't just a weapon, it was my declaration of freedom, a testament to the woman I was becoming. The seeds of my strategy were planted in the quiet moments of winter, as I walked Charleston's cobblestone streets, the salty breeze from the harbor clearing my mind. My investigation had revealed not just Robert's affair, but his plan to humiliate me at Sophie's graduation, to announce our separation in front of friends and family. The betrayal stung, but it also ignited a fire. I'd spent decades supporting Robert's failed Venturisa restaurant in Myrtle Beach, a tech startup that fizzled while raising Sophie and managing our finances at Coastal Trust Bank. I'd put my dream of opening a financial consultancy for women on hold, always promising myself, someday. Now, someday had arrived, and I would seize it with both hands. The cornerstone of my plan was a document from our past. The prenuptial agreement Robert had insisted on 30 years ago, when his family's modest inheritance seemed like a fortune. I'd been hesitant, my love for him outweighing my practicality, but he'd argued it would protect us both. Tucked in a safe deposit box, the prenup included a fidelity clause, a detail Robert had likely forgotten. It stipulated that infidelity would cost him dearly 70% of our joint assets, the Charleston townhouse, our retirement accounts. As I reread the document under the soft glow of my desk lamp, a smile touched my lips. The irony was poetic. The agreement Robert had demanded to safeguard his future would now be his undoing. I consulted with Margaret Sullivan, a sharp family law attorney in Charleston, whose reputation for defending women in crisis was unmatched. Over coffee at a cafe on East Bay Street, the clink of cups mingling with the hum of morning tourists, I shared my evidence. The bank transfers to Robert's secret account, the Miami dinners, the South Beach condo deposit, the messages planning my public humiliation. Margaret's eyes gleamed with respect. "You've built a fortress, Eleanor," she said. "This prenup is ironclad, and your evidence is a sledgehammer." We crafted a divorce filing, timed to perfection. I'd serve the papers the morning of Sophie's graduation, hours before Robert's planned announcement, catching him off guard. The envelope would contain the filing and a summary of his financial deceit, a quiet but devastating blow. Preparation became my sanctuary. Each morning, I meditated on the porch, the marsh stretching toward the horizon, grounding myself in the rhythm of breath and tide. Meditation, a practice I'd adopted through my women's support group, kept my mind clear, my heart steady. I visualized the moment I'd hand Robert the envelope, not with anger, but with the calm of a woman who'd reclaimed her power. At night, I continued my online financial forensics course, connecting with women across the country, Seattle, Raleigh, Atlanta, who shared my passion for justice. One, a forensic accountant named Lisa, sent me a message. "You're not just fighting for yourself, Eleanor. You're fighting for every woman who's been underestimated." Her words became my mantra, a reminder that my plan was bigger than Robert, bigger than me. Sophie remained my guiding light. I hadn't told her about Robert's betrayal, wanting her final semester at Duke to be untainted by our unraveling marriage. But I poured my love into her in other ways. I'd crafted a graduation gift, a silver locket engraved with "You are enough," a phrase I'd whispered to her since childhood. When I ordered it from a jeweler in Savannah, I imagined her wearing it, a reminder of her strength as our family faced its reckoning. Protecting Sophie's joy drove every decision, from the scholarship fundraiser I'd organized for her graduation party to the timing of the divorce filing. Robert wanted to steal her moment. I would ensure it remained hers. Charleston's resilience inspired my own. Walking through the French Quarter, past gaslit lanterns and blooming azaleas, I thought of the women who'd rebuilt this city after storms and wars. Their legacy lived in the city's pastel homes, its enduring spirit, and now in me. My support group at the community center became my anchor, a circle of women who cheered my progress. "You're rewriting your story, Clara," our therapist said one evening, her voice warm with pride. I nodded, thinking of the envelope, the prenup, the evidence. I wasn't just rewriting my story. I was rewriting what it meant to be Eleanor Hayes. The envelope itself became a ritual. I chose the cream-colored stationery from a shop on King Street, its texture smooth under my fingers, and sealed it with a wax stamp bearing a palmetto, South Carolina's symbol of defiance. Inside, I placed the divorce papers and a single page listing Robert's transgressions: the secret account, the jewelry for Lauren, the condo deposit. I didn't include the screenshots or recordings; those were for Margaret and the court, but the summary was enough to shatter Robert's confidence. I imagined his face when he opened it, the smug triumph of his announcement fading to panic. The thought wasn't vengeful, it was just. He'd underestimated me for years, assuming my trust was weakness. He was about to learn otherwise. As Sophie's graduation neared, I felt a quiet power growing within me. The women in my online finance network sent encouragement, their messages a chorus of solidarity. My book club, gathering over wine and novels, sensed my shift, though I hadn't shared the details. "You're glowing, Eleanor," one said, and I smiled, knowing it was the glow of purpose. Even the scholarship fundraiser, which had raised thousands for young women at the College of Charleston, felt like a prelude to my reinvention. I was building, not just for myself, but for others, for a future where no woman felt trapped by betrayal. The morning I finalized the envelope, I stood on the Battery, the harbor sparkling under a Carolina sky. I held the sealed packet, its weight a promise. Robert thought he'd scripted our ending, but I was the author now. The prenup, the evidence, the divorce filing, they were tools, but the real power was mine. I'd spent 30 years holding our family together, sacrificing my dreams for Robert's whims. Now, I'd use that same strength to dismantle his lies and build a life of my own. The envelope wasn't just justice. It was liberation, a door to a future I'd only dared imagine in my journal. As I turned back toward home, the palmetto stamp catching the light, I felt Charleston's heartbeat sync with my own. I was ready for the graduation, for Robert's announcement, for the moment I'd hand him the envelope and step into the light. The Charleston evening wrapped our King Street townhouse in a velvet hush, the kind that follows a storm. It was hours after Sophie's graduation party at the Palmetto Rose, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had stood before 50 guests and declared his intent to leave me for a new life with Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague. I, Eleanor Hayes, 55, had responded not with tears, but with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit, handed to him with the calm of a woman who'd reclaimed her power. Now, as I sat in the living room, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows on the antique cedar bookshelves, I heard Robert's car screech into the driveway. The front door slammed open, his footsteps heavy with rage. "Eleanor," he shouted, his voice echoing through the home we'd built together. "What the hell is this?" I closed my laptop, where I'd been drafting a blog post for my anonymous online journal, and steeled myself. The fallout was here, and I was ready to face it not as the wife who'd held our family together, but as a woman forging her own path. Robert stormed into the room, his face flushed, the envelope clutched in his hand like a grenade. His tailored suit from the party was rumpled, his charisma replaced by desperation. "You served me with divorce papers?" he demanded, waving the packet. "Today? Of all days?" I met his gaze, my voice steady. "It seemed fitting, Robert. You wanted to start your new life. I'm just helping you along." His eyes widened, as if he'd expected me to crumble, to beg him to stay. But I'd spent months preparing for this moment, uncovering his secret account, his lavish gifts to Lauren, his plan to humiliate me at Sophie's graduation. The prenuptial agreement, with its fidelity clause, was my shield, ensuring he'd lose the Charleston townhouse, our retirement accounts, and 70% of our joint assets. He'd underestimated me, and now he was unraveling. "You had no right," he sputtered, collapsing onto the leather couch where we'd once planned Sophie's future. "The prenup expired years ago. Any lawyer will tell you that." I allowed myself a small smile, the kind born of knowledge, not malice. "Actually, it didn't. Section 12 states the fidelity clause holds for the duration of the marriage. Your lawyer might have missed that." "Oh, wait, you didn't consult one, did you?" The color drained from his face, his bravado crumbling. For 30 years, I'd been the practical one, balancing our finances at Coastal Trust Bank, while Robert chased failed Dreamsa Myrtle Beach restaurant. an Atlanta tech startup. I knew contracts, numbers, consequences. He'd forgotten that, and it was his mistake. The air grew heavy, charged with the weight of our shared history. I thought of the early years, when we danced in this very room to jazz records, dreaming of a life together. I'd supported him through 2 miscarriages before Sophie arrived, held his hand when his father died. But somewhere along the way, he'd changed door. Perhaps I'd been too devoted to see who he truly was. "You can't do this to me," he said, his voice softer, almost pleading. "We built this life together." I leaned forward, my eyes steady. "And you chose to end it, Robert, not me." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Likely Lauren, but he ignored it. His focus locked on me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, and it grounded me. I wasn't the villain, I was the survivor. The door opened, and Sophie stepped inside, still in her graduation dress, her makeup smudged from tears. Her arrival shifted the room's energy, her presence a reminder of what mattered most. "Dad, how could you?" she said, her voice trembling but fierce. She'd been at a friend's house, processing the night's chaos, but now she stood tall, her locket the one I'd given her, engraved with, "You are enough," glinting at her throat. Robert's face softened, but only slightly. "Sophie, this is between your mother and me." She shook her head, stepping closer to me. "No, it's not. You blew up our family on my graduation day. You lied to us." Her words cut, and I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I'd protected her from Robert's betrayal for months, but now she knew, and her loyalty warmed me, even as it broke my heart. Margaret, Robert's sister, arrived moments later, her face a mask of disappointment. A literature professor at the College of Charleston, she'd flown in for the graduation and had confronted Robert months ago about Lauren, believing his promise to end the affair. When she learned he hadn't, she'd come to me, her loyalty a quiet gift. "You've made a mess, Robert," she said, folding her arms. "Eleanor's only doing what you forced her to do." Robert's jaw tightened, his world shrinking as his sister and daughter aligned against him. "Everyone's betraying me," he muttered, but I caught his eye. "Ironic, isn't it?" I said, my voice calm. He looked away, unable to face the truth. Sophie's pain was my deepest wound. I'd shielded her from Robert's deceit to preserve her final semester at Duke, but now she carried the weight of his choices. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I whispered later, after Robert left, his parting words a vague threat to fight the divorce. Sophie clung to me, her tears soaking my shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I wanted your graduation to be yours," I said, stroking her hair. "You worked so hard for this." She pulled back, her eyes fierce. "You're so strong, Mom. I want to be like you." Her words were a balm, a reminder that this fight was for her too, to show her what it meant to stand up. Margaret stayed, pouring us wine in the kitchen, the jasmine from the garden drifting through the open window. "He's lost his mind," she said, shaking her head. "That stunt at the restaurant was meant to break you." I nodded, sipping the wine, its warmth steadying me. "He thought I'd collapse." "He was wrong." Margaret smiled, a glint of pride in her eyes. "You're Charleston, Eleanor beautiful, enduring, unbreakable." Her words echoed the city's spirit, its history of surviving hurricanes and wars, and I felt that strength in my bones. I'd already started my anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes, sharing my journey to inspire others. The comments from readers women in Seattle, Raleigh, Atlanta had become a lifeline, their encouragement fueling my resolve. The scholarship fundraiser at the graduation party, raising money for young women at the College of Charleston, had been my quiet rebellion, a way to honor Sophie and my values, even as Robert planned his exit. Now, it felt like a foundation for the future I was building. My women's support group, my online finance network, my book club, they were my community, my army, reminding me I wasn't alone. Robert's phone had buzzed again as he left, likely Lauren demanding answers, but I didn't care. His world was crumbling, not mine. As I stood on the porch later, the marsh glowing under a crescent moon, I thought of the envelope, now in Robert's hands. It wasn't just divorce papers, it was a key to my liberation, a promise that I'd no longer live in his shadow. I'd spent 30 years sacrificing my dreams for his, but no more. Charleston's heartbeat pulsed through me, its resilience my own. The fallout was raw, painful, but it was also a beginning. I was Eleanor Hayes, and I was ready to rise, not just for myself, but for Sophie, for every woman who'd ever been underestimated. The fight was far from over, but I'd already won the first battle against my own fear. The Charleston summer bloomed with a fierce, golden light, as if the city itself were celebrating my rebirth. It was June, weeks after Sophie's graduation from Duke University, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had stood in the Palmetto Rose and announced his intent to leave me for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague. I, Eleanor Hayes, 55, had countered with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit. A move that shifted the narrative from his triumph to my resilience. The fallout had been Robert's rage, Sophie's tears, the quiet strength of Margaret, Robert's sister, but it had also been a catalyst. As I stood in the doorway of a small office space on Broad Street, the scent of fresh paint and possibility filling the air, I felt the ashes of my old life give way to ambition. This was no longer about surviving Robert's betrayal. It was about building a future I'd dreamed of for decades, one where I, Eleanor Hayes, would empower others as I empowered myself. The office, nestled between a bakery and an art gallery in Charleston's historic district, was Modesto's single room with hardwood floors and a window overlooking a courtyard of blooming magnolias. It was here that I launched Hayes Financial Empowerment, my long-deferred dream of a consultancy dedicated to helping women navigate life's financial transitions, divorce, loss, career shifts. For years, I'd put this vision on hold, supporting Robert's failed Venturisa Myrtle Beach restaurant, an Atlanta tech startup, while raising Sophie and managing our finances at Coastal Trust Bank. My journal, hidden in a locked drawer, had held those dreams, its pages filled with promises. Someday, I'll help women take control. Someday was now, and the weight of that truth was both thrilling and humbling. I'd always been prudent, maintaining a separate savings account untouched by Robert's recklessness. That foresight, born of 30 years as a financial analyst, gave me the freedom to lease this office, to buy a desk, to print business cards that read, Eleanor Hayes, founder. My first clients were 2 women from my support group at the Charleston Community Center, both navigating divorces, their eyes bright with fear and hope. I sat across from them, my voice steady, guiding them through budgets, asset division, and the power of knowing their worth. You are enough, I said, echoing the words engraved on the locket I'd given Sophie. Their gratitude, their tentative smiles, lit a fire in me. This was more than a business. It was a calling, a way to transform my pain into purpose. Charleston's vibrant pulse fueled my ambition. Walking to the office each morning, past gaslit lanterns and pastel homes, I felt the city's resilience mirror my own. I joined a women's business network at the College of Charleston, where entrepreneurs shared stories of starting over. At one meeting, a bakery owner named Sarah told me, "You're not just building a company, Eleanor. You're building a legacy." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that Hayes Financial Empowerment was about more than profit, it was about impact. I began hosting free financial literacy workshops at the Charleston Public Library, standing before women of all ages, from single mothers to retirees, teaching them to read bank statements, plan for emergencies, build credit. The room buzzed with questions, with laughter, with the quiet courage of women reclaiming their futures. Each session felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. My anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes, became another outlet for my mission. Started in the wake of Robert's betrayal, it chronicled my journey without naming names, offering insights on resilience, finance, and starting over. Readers from Seattle, Raleigh, Atlanta women I'd never met left comments that became my lifeline. "Your story saved me," one wrote. "I left my toxic marriage because of you." I read their words late at night, the glow of my laptop a beacon in the darkness. The blog wasn't just therapy, it was a bridge, connecting me to a community beyond Charleston, a reminder that my pain had purpose. I began drafting a guidebook based on the blog, a practical manual for women in transition, its working title, You Are Enough. It was a dream I hadn't dared voice, now taking shape with every keystroke. Sophie, now settling into a marketing job in Raleigh, was my greatest cheerleader. She called weekly, her voice bright with pride. "Mom, you're unstoppable," she said after I described my first workshop. "I'm telling everyone about your company." Her visits to Charleston were a balm. Our walks along the Battery filled with laughter and plans. She wore the locket I'd given her, its message a bond between us. I'd kept Robert's betrayal from her to protect her final semester at Duke, but now, knowing the truth, she'd chosen my side, her loyalty a gift I hadn't expected. "Dad's still calling, but I'm not ready to talk," she admitted one evening, her eyes distant. I hugged her, my voice soft. "He's still your father, Sophie. Your relationship with him is yours to define." She nodded, her strength a mirror of my own, a testament to the practical dreamer I'd raised. Margaret, Robert's sister, remained a steadfast ally. Over wine in her bungalow near the College of Charleston, she marveled at my transformation. "You're not just surviving, Eleanor. You're thriving," she said, raising her glass. I smiled, thinking of the scholarship fundraiser at Sophie's graduation, where we'd raised thousands for young women. That act of giving, even as Robert planned to humiliate me, had been my first step toward this new life. Margaret, a literature professor, suggested I speak at the college's Women's Leadership Series, an invitation I accepted with a mix of nerves and excitement. Standing before students, I shared my story, not the betrayal, but the rebirth, the power of financial independence. Their applause echoed in my heart, a reminder that my voice mattered. My women's support group, my book club, my online finance network, they were my anchors, their encouragement a chorus of strength. At a book club meeting discussing a novel about a woman's reinvention, a friend said, "Eleanor, you're living this story." I laughed, but she was right. Charleston, with its history of surviving hurricanes and wars, was the perfect backdrop for my journey. Its cobblestone streets, its marsh sunsets, its enduring spirit, they were part of me now, woven into the fabric of Hayes' financial empowerment. Robert's shadow lingered, but it was fading. The divorce papers, backed by the prenup's fidelity clause, had frozen our joint accounts, halting his plans with Lauren. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My victory was in this office, in the women I helped, in the life I was building. My separate savings, untouched by Robert's recklessness, gave me stability, but it was my ambition that gave me wings. I'd spent 30 years sacrificing for others, believing my dreams could wait. Now, they were here, alive in every workshop, every blog post, every client who left my office stronger than when she arrived. As I locked the office one evening, the magnolias glowing under a Carolina moon, I thought of my journal, its pages no longer filled with someday, but with today. I'd risen from the ashes of Robert's betrayal, not with anger, but with purpose. Hayes' financial empowerment was more than a business. It was a promisto, myself, to Sophie, to every woman who'd ever felt invisible. Charleston's heartbeat pulsed through me, its resilience my own. I was Eleanor Hayes, and I was building a legacy, one bold, beautiful step at a time. The Charleston courthouse stood like a sentinel on Broad Street, its white columns gleaming under a July sun that promised both heat and clarity. It was weeks after Sophie's graduation from Duke University, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had shattered our family by announcing his intent to leave me for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, in front of 50 guests at the Palmetto Rose. I, Eleanor Hayes, 55, had responded with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit, a calculated move that sparked a confrontation and fueled my reinvention. I'd launched Hayes Financial Empowerment, my consultancy for women, from a small office nearby, turning pain into purpose. Now, as I walked into the courtroom, my attorney Margaret Sullivan by my side, I felt the weight of the moment. This was not just a legal battle, it was a reckoning, a chance for justice to affirm the strength I'd found within. The gavel's strike would echo far beyond these walls, marking the end of one chapter and the triumph of another. The courtroom was small, its oak benches worn by years of stories like mine. I wore a tailored navy suit, my hair pulled back, the locket I'd given Sophie, "You are enough," tucked beneath my blouse, a quiet reminder of why I fought. Robert sat across the room, his face haggard, his suit ill-fitting, a stark contrast to the charisma he'd wielded at the graduation. Beside him was a young attorney, a corporate lawyer from Atlanta, his nervous glances betraying his inexperience. Robert's choice of counsel was another misstep, a reflection of his rushed arrogance. Margaret, sharp and composed, had prepared me for this preliminary hearing, where we'd argue to uphold the prenuptial agreement and freeze our joint accounts. The evidence, bank records, screenshots, recordings of Robert's plans with Lauren was our fortress, built with the precision I'd honed as a financial analyst at Coastal Trust Bank. Judge Evelyn Carter, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing eyes, presided with an air of quiet authority. She reviewed the prenup, its fidelity clause clear. Infidelity would cost Robert 70% of our joint assets. The Charleston townhouse. Our retirement accounts. This document appears airtight, she said, her voice steady, peering over her glasses at Robert's attorney. Do you contest its validity? The young lawyer cleared his throat, his argument thin. Your Honor, we believe the agreement expired due to the passage of time. Margaret countered smoothly, citing Section 18. The fidelity clause endures for the term of the marriage and any resulting legal proceedings. Judge Carter nodded, her pen moving across her notes. No expiration is indicated, she said, her tone final. Robert leaned forward, whispering urgently to his lawyer, his face reddening. I sat still, my heart steady, feeling the tide turn. The judge turned to the financial evidence, my months of investigation laid bare. The systematic transfers to a separate account, she read, violate the prenup's disclosure requirements. I'd documented every transaction, $500 here, $700 there, funding Miami dinners, a South Beach condo deposit, jewelry for Lauren. The screenshots of Robert's messages, planning my public humiliation, were submitted as context, though not read aloud. Judge Carter's gaze lingered on Robert, her disapproval subtle but unmistakable. I'm ruling to maintain the freeze on joint accounts pending full discovery, she declared. The family home remains in Mrs. Hayes' possession, per the prenup's infidelity clause. Mr. Hayes retains access to his personal account. Robert's jaw tightened, his mutter, "This is outrageous," audible across the room. Judge Carter's eyes snapped to him. Mr. Hayes, I suggest you review the agreement you signed. The gavel struck, sharp and clear, sealing the preliminary victory. Outside, the Charleston air was thick with summer, the scent of magnolias mingling with the salt of the nearby harbor. Margaret squeezed my arm, her smile triumphant. You did it, Eleanor. This is just the start. I nodded, my chest light with relief, but also with something deeper. Validation. The prenup, which Robert had insisted on 30 years ago to protect his modest inheritance, had become my shield, a poetic twist of fate. I'd spent decades supporting his failed Venturisa Myrtle Beach restaurant, an Atlanta tech startup, while raising Sophie and securing our finances. Now, my foresight, my resilience, had turned his betrayal against him. The victory was personal, but it was also communal. That evening I hosted a small gathering at the townhouse with Sophie and Margaret, the kitchen warm with the scent of shrimp and grits, a low-country staple. Sophie, visiting from her marketing job in Raleigh, hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, Mom, she said, her locket glinting. You're unstoppable. Margaret raised a glass of wine, her toast simple. To Justice and to Eleanor. We laughed, the sound a release, a celebration of survival. I'd protected Sophie from Robert's deceit until after her graduation. But now, knowing the truth, she stood by me, her strength a mirror of my own. Margaret, who'd confronted Robert about Lauren months ago, was my rock, her loyalty a reminder of family's true meaning. My women's support group at the Charleston Community Center had cheered my progress, their encouragement a chorus of strength. At our next meeting, I shared the court's ruling. My voice steady, but emotional. This isn't just about me, I said. It's about every woman who's been underestimated. The room erupted in applause, their faces Maria, Clara, others reflecting my own fire. Inspired, I joined a local advocacy group, pushing for stronger financial protections for women in divorce, my voice growing louder. My anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes, gained traction. Readers from Seattle to Atlanta leaving comments. You're my hero. Each message fueled my resolve, a reminder that my fight was theirs too. Charleston's history of endurance was my backdrop, Walking the Battery, the harbor glittering under a Carolina sky, I thought of the women who'd rebuilt this city after storms. Their legacy lived in its cobblestone streets, its pastel homes, and now in me. My consultancy, Hayes Financial Empowerment, was thriving, its Broad Street office a beacon for women seeking control. The scholarship fundraiser at Sophie's graduation, raising thousands for young women, had been my first act of defiance. This court ruling was its echo, a testament to my refusal to be silenced. Robert's world was shrinking. The frozen accounts halted his plans with Lauren, his dreams of a South Beach condo evaporating. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My victory was in the clients I empowered, the workshops I led at the Charleston Public Library, the guidebook I was drafting. The final hearing, set for our 31st anniversary, loomed, but I was ready. The prenup, my evidence, my truth, they were unassailable. As I stood on my porch that night, the marsh glowing under a crescent moon, I felt Charleston's heartbeat sync with mine. The gavel strike had been more than a legal win. It was a declaration that I, Eleanor Hayes, was enough. I'd spent 30 years building a life for others. Now, I was building one for myself, and no one could take that away. The Charleston autumn draped King Street in a tapestry of amber and crimson, the live oaks whispering tales of endings and beginnings. It was August, months after Sophie's graduation from Duke University, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had stood in the Palmetto Rose and announced his intent to leave me for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, before 50 stunned guests. I, Eleanor Hayes, 55, had countered with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit, sparking a confrontation, fueling my reinvention, and securing a preliminary courtroom victory. My consultancy, Hayes Financial Empowerment, now thrived on Broad Street, a beacon for women seeking control. The prenuptial agreement's fidelity clause had frozen our joint accounts, protecting the Charleston townhouse and our retirement funds. As I stood on my porch, the marsh glowing under a harvest moon, I felt the ripples of Robert's unraveling world. His house of cards, built on lies and arrogance, was collapsing, and I, unshaken, was building a life rooted in truth. Robert's downfall was swift, a stark contrast to the charisma he'd once wielded. The frozen accounts halted his dreams of a South Beach condo with Lauren, the luxury car he'd put a deposit on canceled, the lavish lifestyle he'd promised her evaporating. I learned through Margaret, Robert's sister, and my steadfast ally, that Lauren had left him, moving to Atlanta to date a real estate developer. She found out his business was a mirage. Margaret told me over coffee at a cafe on East Bay Street, the clink of cups mingling with the hum of morning tourists. Robert's consulting firm, already struggling, had relied on my financial acumen to stay afloat. Without my guidance, clients dwindled, invoices went unpaid, and his facade of success crumbled. Lauren, it seemed, had signed up for a fantasy, not a man with mounting debts. Charleston's social circle, once Robert's stage, turned against him. Friends who'd dined in our townhouse who'd known of his affair but stayed silent now distanced themselves, their invitations drying up. I heard whispers at my book club held in a historic home on the Battery, its windows open to the harbor breeze, that Robert had posted a rambling defense on social media, claiming I'd orchestrated his ruin. The post backfired, comments flooding in. "You made your bed, Robert. Eleanor's the real hero. I didn't read it myself. I didn't need to." My victory was in the women I empowered, the workshops I led at the Charleston Public Library, the anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes, that now reached thousands. A reader from Seattle wrote, "Your strength saved my life." Her words, glowing on my laptop screen, were worth more than any public vindication. Sophie, working in Raleigh, felt the sting of her father's collapse. She called one evening, her voice heavy. "Dad keeps texting, saying you've lost your mind, that he's the victim." I stood in my kitchen, the scent of jasmine drifting from the garden, and sighed. "Let him talk, Sophie. The truth speaks louder." She paused, then said, "I'm not ready to see him. He hugged me at graduation, acting proud, while planning to hurt you." Her pain mirrored mine, but so did her strength. The locket I'd given her, engraved with "You are enough," was a bond between us, a reminder of the resilience I'd modeled. "He's still your father," I said gently. "Your path with him is yours to choose." She nodded through the phone, her silence a promise we'd navigate this together. Robert's attempt to rewrite the narrative reached me directly one morning. A letter slipped under my door, its handwriting shaky. "I made a mistake, Eleanor," he wrote. "Can we talk? 30 years means something?" I read it on the porch, the marsh stretching toward the horizon, and felt a pang for the man I'd loved, the one who'd danced with me to jazz records, held my hand through Sophie's birth. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who'd spent a year funneling money to Lauren, planning my humiliation. I didn't hate him. I pitied him. His letter wasn't remorse. It was desperation, a final grasp at control. I folded it away, choosing silence. My answer was in my actions, the consultancy, the blog, the life I was building without him. Margaret, a literature professor at the College of Charleston, saw Robert's fall as a tragedy of his own making. Over wine in her bungalow, its walls lined with books, she said. "He thought he could rewrite the story, but you're the author now." Her words resonated, echoing Charleston's enduring spirit. The city, with its cobblestone streets and pastel homes, had survived fires and wars, its resilience woven into my own. I joined a local advocacy group for women's financial protections, speaking at community centers about divorce reform. My voice, once confined to boardrooms and bedtime stories, now carried weight, inspiring women to demand fairness. A client, a widow rebuilding after loss, sent me a thank you note. "You showed me I'm not invisible." I framed it, hanging it in my office, a reminder of my purpose. My support group at the community center, my women's business network, my online finance community, they were my foundation, their encouragement, a chorus of strength. At a network meeting, a bakery owner said, "Eleanor, you're proof we can rise from anything." I smiled, thinking of the scholarship fundraiser at Sophie's graduation, where we'd raised thousands for young women. That act, born in the shadow of Robert's betrayal, had planted seeds for my consultancy, for this moment. My guidebook, "You Are Enough," was taking shape, its chapters blending practical advice with stories of resilience, drawn from my blog and my life. Robert's collapse wasn't my goal, but it was inevitable. The prenup, my evidence, the courtroom ruling, they'd stripped away his illusions, leaving him with a failing business, a small apartment, and the weight of his choices. He approached me one last time, outside my office on Broad Street, his face gaunt. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," he said, his voice low. "I lost everything." I met his gaze, my heart steady. "You lost what you chose to throw away," I replied, not cruelly but firmly. "I hope you find peace." I walked away, the magnolias blooming overhead, feeling no need for vengeance. My peace was in my work, my daughter, my city. Charleston's beauty, its history of rising from ruins, mirrored my journey. Walking the French Quarter, past gaslit lanterns and blooming azaleas, I felt part of its legacy. My blog readers, my clients, my community, they were my new family, bound by shared strength. Sophie visited, her pride palpable as we strolled the Battery, the harbor glittering. "You're my hero, Mom," she said, and I hugged her, knowing I'd shown her what it meant to stand tall. Robert's house of cards had fallen, but mine was built on stone, on truth, on resilience, on love. As I stood on my porch that night, the marsh aglow, I knew this wasn't the end. It was a beginning, one where I, Eleanor Hayes, would continue to rise. Not just for myself, but for every woman who'd ever dared to rebuild. The Charleston winter settled over King Street like a soft shawl, its crisp air carrying the promise of renewal. It was December, 6 months after Sophie's graduation from Duke University, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had shattered our world by announcing his intent to leave me for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, before 50 stunned guests at the Palmetto Rose. I, Eleanor Hayes, 55, had responded with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit, a move that sparked a confrontation, fueled my reinvention, and secured a courtroom victory. My consultancy, Hayes Financial Empowerment, had grown from a small Broad Street office into a thriving hub, empowering women through workshops, advocacy, and my anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes. Robert's house of cards had collapsed, his business failing, Lauren gone, his social standing in tatters. As I stood in my new, larger office, its windows framing a courtyard of blooming camellias, I felt the weight of my journey. This wasn't just about my survival. It was about crafting a legacy of strength, one that would ripple through Charleston and beyond, touching lives I'd never meet. Hayes' financial empowerment was no longer a dream deferred, but a beacon of hope. The move to a larger office on Meeting Street, with its exposed brick walls and skylights, marked a milestone. I'd hired 2 associates, Maria from my support group, a divorcee with a knack for budgeting, and Claire, a young analyst with a passion for teaching. Together, we served dozens of clients, from single mothers to retirees, guiding them through financial transitions with compassion and clarity. One client, a widow named Susan, clutched my hand after a session, her eyes bright. "You gave me courage, Eleanor," she said. "I'm starting my own business." Her words, framed alongside others on my office wall, were my fuel, a reminder that every plan I crafted, every workshop I led, was a thread in a tapestry of empowerment. Charleston's vibrant spirit was my partner in this work. I organized a financial empowerment fair at Marion Square, its cobblestone paths buzzing with vendors, speakers, and women eager to learn. The event, co-sponsored by the College of Charleston's Women's Business Network, drew hundreds, their faces alight with possibility. I stood on a small stage, the harbor breeze stirring my hair, and shared my story, not the betrayal, but the rebirth. "You are enough," I said, echoing the locket I'd given Sophie, my voice carrying over the crowd. Applause rose, warm and fierce, and I felt Charleston's heartbeat sync with mine. This city, with its history of rising from fires and storms, was the perfect canvas for my legacy, its pastel homes and gaslit lanterns a backdrop for change. My blog, Rising from Ashes, had become a movement. What began as a private outlet now reached thousands. Its comments a chorus of resilience. Women from Seattle, Raleigh, Atlanta shared their stories, leaving toxic marriages, launching businesses, reclaiming their worth. Inspired, I'd published a slim book, You Are Enough, a financial guide for women in transition, blending practical advice with lessons from my journey. At a signing event in a Charleston bookstore, its shelves fragrant with paper and ink, a reader approached, tears in her eyes. "Your book got me through my divorce," she said. I hugged her, my heart full, knowing my words were seeds, sprouting in lives far beyond my own. Sophie, now thriving in her marketing job in Raleigh, was my greatest pride. She visited often, her weekends in Charleston filled with walks along the Battery, the harbor glittering under Carolina skies. "You're changing the world, Mom," she said one evening, her locket glinting as we sipped sweet tea on my porch. Her pride was a mirror, reflecting the woman I'd become: mentor, advocate, mother. Sophie's relationship with Robert remained strained, his apologies unanswered, but I encouraged her patience. "He's your father," I said gently. "Your path with him is yours." She nodded, her strength a testament to the practical dreamer I'd raised, her Duke degree a milestone we'd earned together. Margaret, Robert's sister and my steadfast ally, marveled at my impact. Over dinner in her bungalow near the College of Charleston, its walls lined with poetry, she raised a glass. "You're a force, Eleanor," she said. "This legacy, it's bigger than you." She was right. I'd endowed a scholarship at Duke in Sophie's name, funding women in finance, a quiet tribute to my daughter's journey. The first recipient, a freshman from Savannah, wrote me a letter. "Because of you, I'm chasing my dreams." I read it on the Battery, the waves lapping at the seawall, and felt a surge of purpose. My legacy wasn't just in my work. It was in the futures I helped shape. My community, my support group, my book club, my online finance network was my foundation. At a support group meeting, Clara, our therapist, said, "Eleanor, you're proof that pain can birth power." I nodded, thinking of the scholarship fundraiser at Sophie's graduation, where we'd raised thousands, despite Robert's betrayal. That act had planted seeds for my consultancy, my fair, my book. My advocacy group for women's financial protections grew, our voices shaping policy at Charleston town halls. I spoke at a regional conference, sharing data on divorce inequities. My words met with standing ovations. Each step forward was a brick in my legacy, built not on vengeance but on vision. Robert's absence was a faint echo, his life reduced to a small apartment and a failing business. I didn't rejoice in his fall. I'd moved beyond it. My separate savings, untouched by his recklessness, had funded my consultancy's growth, but it was my ambition that sustained it. My blog readers, my clients, my community, they were my family now, bound by shared strength. One evening, a client invited me to her daughter's graduation, a small ceremony at a Charleston high school. As I watched the girl cross the stage, her mother beaming beside me, I saw myself in them women rising, together. Charleston's beauty, its resilience, was woven into my work. Walking the French Quarter, past galleries and blooming azaleas, I felt part of its legacy. My fair at Marion Square had sparked a citywide conversation, local papers calling it a revolution for women. I'd begun planning an annual Day of Empowerment, a festival of workshops and stories, set for next spring. The idea came from a blog comment. Eleanor, give us a day to celebrate our strength. I embraced it, envisioning a Charleston alive with women's voices, its cobblestone streets a stage for change. As I stood in my office one night, the camellias glowing under a winter moon, I thought of my journal, its pages no longer dreams but realities. I'd spent 30 years sacrificing for Robert, believing my time would come. It had, and I'd seized it, not just for myself, but for Sophie, for Susan, for every woman who'd felt invisible. Hayes' Financial Empowerment. My book, my scholarship, they were my legacy, a testament to what resilience could build. Charleston's heartbeat pulsed through me, its history of survival my own. I was Eleanor Hayes, and my strength wasn't just innate, it was a flame, lighting the way for others. A legacy that would endure long after I was gone. The Savannah spring unfolded like a love letter, its squares draped in azaleas and Spanish moss, the air sweet with promise. It was April 2026. Nearly a year after Sophie's graduation from Duke University, where my husband of 30 years, Robert, had stood in the Forsyth Room, a grand Savannah restaurant, and announced his intent to leave me for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, before 50 stunned guests. I, Eleanor Hayes, 56, had countered with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his financial deceit, a move that ignited a confrontation, fueled my reinvention, and secured a courtroom victory. My consultancy, Hayes Financial Empowerment, had blossomed from a small office on Bull Street into a thriving hub, empowering women through workshops, a published book, and a scholarship fund. Robert's world had collapsed, his business failing, Lauren gone, his life reduced to a small apartment. As I stood on the balcony of my historic townhouse on Jones Street, the Savannah River glinting in the dawn, I felt the weight of my journey lift. This was the dawn of Eleanor Hayes, a woman who'd turned betrayal into triumph, not just for herself, but for every woman she'd touched. The past year had been a crucible, forging me into someone new. I'd spent 30 years supporting Robert's failed Venturessa Myrtle Beach restaurant, an Atlanta tech startup, while raising Sophie and managing our finances at Coastal Trust Bank. My dreams of a financial consultancy for women had waited in my journal, their pages filled with "someday." But Robert's betrayal had been the spark, the envelope, my first step toward liberation. Now, Hayes Financial Empowerment was a beacon, its Meeting Street office bustling with clients, associates, and purpose. I'd hired Maria and Claire, women whose passion matched my own, and together we'd guided hundreds through divorces, career shifts, and loss. A client's note, framed on my desk, read, "You showed me I'm not alone." Each success was a brick in my legacy, a testament to what resilience could build. Savannah's beauty was my muse, its cobblestone streets and oak-lined squares a mirror of my rebirth. I'd joined a travel club, exploring cities like Seattle and New Orleans, each trip a celebration of my independence. In Seattle, I walked Pike Place Market, the salt air reminding me of Savannah's riverfront, and felt free, unburdened by the roles I'd once played. In New Orleans, I danced to jazz in the French Quarter, my laughter mingling with strangers, a reminder that joy was mine to claim. Back home, I organized Savannah's first Day of Rebirth, a festival at Forsyth Park, its fountains sparkling as women shared stories of starting over. I spoke to the crowd, my voice steady, the locket I'd given Sophie "You Are Enough" warm against my skin. "We are not defined by our pain," I said, "but by what we build from it." The applause, fierce and warm, was Savannah's heartbeat, pulsing with mine. My book, "You Are Enough," a financial guide for women in transition, had become a quiet phenomenon. Published from my blog, Rising from Ashes, it blended practical advice with stories of resilience, reaching women across the country. At a signing in a Savannah bookstore, its shelves fragrant with history, a young mother thanked me, her voice trembling. "Your book helped me leave an abusive marriage," she said. I hugged her, tears in my eyes, knowing my words were lifelines, stretching from Savannah to Seattle. The blog itself, now with thousands of readers, was a community, its comments women in Raleigh, Atlanta, beyond a chorus of strength. "You're my inspiration," one wrote. And I read it on my balcony. The river's dawn glow, a promise of connection. Sophie, thriving in her Raleigh marketing job, was my heart's anchor. She visited often, our walks through Savannah's squares filled with laughter and dreams. "You've changed everything, Mom," she said one evening, her locket glinting as we sipped coffee at a cafe on Broughton Street. Her pride was my greatest reward, her Duke degree a milestone we'd earned together. Sophie's bond with Robert remained distant, his apologies unanswered, but I encouraged her patience. "He's your father," I said softly, stirring my coffee. "Your journey with him is yours." She nodded, her strength a mirror of the practical dreamer I'd raised, her presence a reminder that love endured, even through pain. Margaret, Robert's sister and my ally, saw my transformation as a triumph. Over wine in her bungalow near Savannah College of Art and Design, its walls alive with poetry, she raised a glass. "You're a legend, Eleanor," she said, her smile warm. "This is bigger than you." She was right. I'd endowed a scholarship at Duke for women in finance, named for Sophie, its first recipient a freshman whose letter thanked me for opening doors. I read it on the riverfront, the Savannah River's ripples carrying my hope. My advocacy group, pushing for women's financial protections, had influenced Georgia policy, my speeches at town halls drawing crowds. A local paper called me Savannah's Voice for Women, a title I wore with pride. My community, my support group, my book club, my online finance network was my foundation. At a support group meeting, Clara, our therapist, said, "Eleanor, you've turned pain into power." I smiled, thinking of the scholarship fundraiser at Sophie's graduation, where we'd raised thousands despite Robert's betrayal. That act had seeded my consultancy, my fair, my book, my festival, my travel club, my workshops at the Savannah Public Library, my day of rebirth. They were threads in a tapestry of change, woven with Savannah's resilient spirit. Walking Monterey Square, past historic homes and blooming camellias, I felt part of the city's legacy, its survival through wars and storms a mirror of my own. I'd begun dating, cautiously, a widower named Thomas from my travel club. Our dinners at the Old Pink House, Savannah's culinary gem, were filled with laughter, but I guarded my independence fiercely. My heart belonged to my work, my daughter, my city. Robert was a faint memory, his life a small apartment and a failed business. I didn't wish him ill. I'd moved beyond his shadow. My separate savings had funded my consultancy's growth, but it was my vision that sustained it. A client's daughter, graduating high school, invited me to her ceremony, her mother's pride echoing my own with Sophie. I watched her cross the stage, my heart full, knowing I'd helped build that moment. As I stood on my balcony one dawn, the Savannah River aglow, I thought of my journal, its some days now realities. I'd spent 30 years sacrificing for Robert, believing my time would wait. It hadn't. I'd claimed it, not just for myself, but for Sophie, for my clients, for every woman who'd read my book or joined my festival. Hayes Financial Empowerment, my scholarship, my advocacy. They were my dawn, a new day breaking over a life I'd built from ashes. Savannah's beauty, its cobblestone paths and riverfront glow, was my canvas, its resilience my own. I was Eleanor Hayes, and this dawn was many a radiant beginning, not just for me, but for every woman who dared to rise, to shine, to be enough. In the soft glow of a Savannah spring, where the Savannah River weaves its silver thread through squares of azaleas and Spanish moss, Eleanor Hayes stands as a testament to the power of resilience. Her story, which began in the grand dining room of the Forsyth Room on the day of her daughter Sophie's graduation from Duke University, is one of betrayal, reinvention, and triumph. At 55, Eleanor faced a moment that could have broken her. Her husband of 30 years, Robert, announced his intent to leave her for Lauren Brooks, his 38-year-old colleague, before 50 stunned guests. The public humiliation was meant to shatter her, but Eleanor responded with a cream-colored envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of Robert's financial deceit, a calculated move that set the stage for a journey of profound transformation. From the ashes of a 30-year marriage, Eleanor built a life of purpose, leaving a legacy that resonates far beyond the cobblestone streets of Savannah. Eleanor's journey was rooted in sacrifice. For 3 decades, she supported Robert's failed Venturesa Myrtle Beach restaurant, an Atlanta tech startup, while raising Sophie into a brilliant, compassionate woman and managing their finances at Coastal Trust Bank. Her dreams of opening a financial consultancy for women were deferred, recorded in a journal filled with, "Someday." But when she discovered Robert's secret account, funding lavish gifts for Lauren and a South Beach condo, her intuition sparked an investigation. Armed with bank records, screenshots, and recordings, Eleanor uncovered a year-long plan to humiliate her at Sophie's graduation. Instead of confronting him, she chose strategy, consulting attorney Margaret Sullivan, and leveraging a prenuptial agreement's fidelity clause to protect her future. The envelope, handed to Robert with calm defiance, was her first step toward liberation, a symbol of her refusal to be defined by betrayal. The fallout was raw. Robert's rage filled their Jones Street townhouse, his accusations met with Eleanor's steady resolve and Sophie's fierce loyalty. Margaret, Robert's sister, stood by Eleanor, her disappointment in her brother a quiet strength. As Robert's world unraveled, his accounts frozen, Lauren leaving for Atlanta, his business collapsing, Eleanor rose. She launched Hayes Financial Empowerment from a small Bull Street office, a consultancy that grew into a meeting street hub, empowering women through workshops, advocacy, and a book, "You Are Enough." Her anonymous blog, Rising from Ashes, connected her to thousands, its stories of resilience, a lifeline for women from Seattle to Raleigh. She endowed a scholarship at Duke, organized Savannah's Day of Rebirth Festival, and spoke at town halls, her voice shaping policy for women's financial protections. Each act was a brick in a legacy of strength, built not on vengeance, but on vision. Eleanor's transformation was deeply personal, yet universally inspiring. She explored new horizons with a travel club, dancing in New Orleans and breathing Seattle's salt air, reclaiming joy on her terms. She dated cautiously, prioritizing her independence, her heart anchored by Sophie's pride and her community's supporter book club, support group, and online finance network. Savannah, with its historic squares and riverfront glow, was her partner, its resilience echoing her own. The final courtroom victory, on what would have been her 31st anniversary, upheld the prenup, granting her the townhouse, retirement accounts, and 70% of their assets. Robert's apology, offered in a final, gaunt encounter, was met with Eleanor's gentle refusal. That door is closed. Her peace was in her work, her daughter, her city, a life she'd built from the ruins of betrayal. The lesson of Eleanor's story is profound. Resilience is not the absence of pain, but the courage to transform it into purpose. Betrayal, whether in love, trust, or dreams, can feel like an end, but Eleanor shows it can be a beginning. Her journey teaches us that strength lies in preparation, community, and self-belief. She didn't just survive Robert's deceit, she used her skills, her intuition, and her heart to build a legacy that empowered others. For the U.S. audience aged 18 to 55, navigating careers, relationships, and personal growth, Eleanor's story offers a roadmap. When life delivers a blow, a job loss, a broken relationship, a deferred dream, pause, assess, and act with intention. Eleanor's investigation, her prenup strategy, her consultancy, they were deliberate choices, proof that knowledge and planning can turn vulnerability into power. Applying this lesson today means embracing agency in our own stories. Start small, keep a journal like Eleanor to name your dreams and fears. Build skills, whether through a course, a network, or a mentor, to prepare for life's uncertainties. Seek community friends, support groups, online forums, because no one rises alone. Eleanor's book club, her support group, her festival day were lifelines, reminding us that connection fuels resilience. For women especially, her story underscores the importance of financial independence. Learn to budget. Save. Invest. Knowledge is armor. But this isn't just for women. Anyone facing a setback can draw from Eleanor's courage. Refuse to be defined by others' choices, and build a life that reflects your worth. Eleanor's legacy also challenges us to give back. Her scholarship, her workshops, her advocacy, they amplified her impact, proving that helping others heals us too. Volunteer, mentor, share your story. Even small acts ripple outward. In a world of rapid change, where economic shifts and personal crises test us, Eleanor's dawn offers hope. You are enough not because of what you endure, but because of what you create from it. As I imagine Eleanor on her balcony, the Savannah River aglow, I see a woman who turned pain into power, betrayal into beauty. Her story isn't just hers, it's ours, a call to rise, to build, to shine. In every heart that dares to start again, the dawn of Eleanor Hayes lives on, a radiant promise that from ashes, we can forge a legacy that endures.